Good afternoon, everyone. We are just going to leave it a couple more minutes to allow for everyone to attend the session, and we'll get started shortly. Okay, well, we'll make a start now. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our latest webinar, where we are answering the questions you've proposed on how to design and set up an effective recruitment process. My name is Mandy Glover, and I'm the Operations Director here at Cohesion, and I'm joined today by one of our senior recruiters, Charlotte Cooper. The plan for the webinar is for us to talk through the answers to the questions that we received in advance of today. During the session, we encourage you to send in any questions you may have during the webinar by typing them into the chat box window. We will aim to finish with some time to spare so we can answer any questions that you may have. If we don't have time to answer all of those that are sent through, we'll be sure to come back to you directly after the webinar. So without further ado, let's move into the first question. The first question we have been asked is regarding the number of vacancies a recruiter can effectively manage. Now, this is a really good question and one we get asked a lot as an RPO provider. The answer, predictably, is it depends on the types of roles you're recruiting for and the processes you adopt. We have found that for our volume recruitment campaigns, where we are recruiting high numbers of a similar role type, such as your care workers, warehouse operatives, contact centre staff, and so forth, that we're able to manage a higher number of roles by following a consistent recruitment process across all campaigns. This will typically involve different teams who are working on specific elements of the recruitment process. So we have a sourcing and attraction team that works specifically on our candidate reach. We have a candidate team that focuses on the candidate journey, ensuring they are engaged with regularly throughout the process and that they move through the relevant stages as quickly and efficiently as possible. We then have a team who focuses on the client relationship. They are responsible for taking the brief and ensuring the managers are kept informed throughout the recruitment process. Now, this structure is really fluid and it allows the team members to move between teams, or indeed for us to introduce new members to the relevant team as the volume increases. So for us, it provides a scalable model that we are able to flex based on requirements. And so we find that a team of 7 recruiters are able to manage around 600 vacancies.
This, however, will be very different for more specialist recruitment, especially with senior positions that require a headhunted executive search approach. So one recruiter will be responsible for the whole of the candidate's journey in the recruitment process and will liaise with the client throughout to keep them up to date, reducing the number of vacancies a recruiter can effectively manage. When conducting an executive search for a senior position, for example, a director post on a salary of 90,000, just putting an advert online will not always achieve the best results. So in-depth direct sourcing across a number of different methods is usually needed. A recruiter will therefore usually speak to candidates in the passive market, and due to the nature of the passive market, not every candidate will be immediately open to move jobs, explore new opportunities, or even be interested in the company or role that you have to offer. As a result, the recruiter will be having to speak to over 200 candidates per role, potentially on multiple occasions, to secure candidate engagement and that the top talent has been identified for that post. Once a shortlist has been identified, we would normally select 4 to 5 people per role to move forward to the first interview stage. For more senior roles, there are usually multiple stages throughout the process, and the interviews are far more in-depth, so candidate management is key. The recruiter would then work closely with the candidate throughout each stage of the recruitment process, ensuring they remain engaged and have a positive experience. The structure for effective recruitment of senior roles requires constant adapting for candidates' needs and requirements. We therefore typically find volume is a lot lower, and we would normally manage around 6 to 7 roles at any one time, allowing a recruiter to dedicate the necessary time to make the recruitment successful first time round. So we've given you an idea of what the ratio of vacancies to recruiters look like for volume recruitment and for specialist executive search vacancies. So what about everything else? Well, in our experience, we have found that where you are recruiting for a variety of mid-level roles ranging from salaries of 20 to 60,000, a recruiter is able to manage approximately 30 to 40 vacancies at any one time. Anything above this can have a negative impact on service delivery. Of course, all of this depends on the skill of the recruiters managing the process. So, in our opinion, the number of vacancies a recruiter can effectively manage to deliver a quality recruitment process will vary based on the type of roles, the level, and the recruitment process you can adopt.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Charlotte. So our next question is, how do I support hiring managers to recruit effectively? Now, ensuring your hiring managers are confident with recruiting is an essential part of the recruitment process that all too often is unfortunately overlooked. So we have found that when we support organisations with a review of their recruitment practices, that one of the areas that is often highlighted as a concern is the quality of the interviews and decisions that are being made at the face-to-face interview stage. Now, when we dig into this a little bit deeper, what we tend to find is that many of the hiring managers who are conducting face-to-face interviews have never been given any formal interview skills training, including being aware of bias and how this can impact on their decision-making process. It's therefore really important to provide hiring managers with training on the best practice for interviewing candidates. This helps them to understand the different types of biases that may arise and the steps that they can take to reduce their impact. What's more, it also helps them to recognise the important fact that an interview is a two-way process, whereby candidates are assessing you as much as you are assessing them. It needs to be seen as an opportunity for managers to sell the company to prospective candidates and ensure they have a great experience so they are left with a positive perception of your employer brand regardless of the outcome. A manager who turns up late, clock watches or yawns during the interview is not going to give the best first impression. Further support can also be given to managers in the form of the interview questions and helping them to understand the different types of questions that can be asked. For example, when is it best to use a values-based question over a competency-based question? Where recruitment can often suffer is where the pre-screening and assessment that occurs at the initial stage of the recruitment process does not match what the managers are then assessing at face-to-face interview stage. For example, if you take an approach at the pre-screening assessment that you're going to focus on values and behaviour, so you're going to recruit for will and train for skill, and then at face-to-face interview, all the questions are competency-based that require a candidate to have previous experience, then candidates are naturally not going to perform well. It's therefore really important to ensure the whole recruitment process is aligned at each stage. When interview questions are reviewed, it is often found that there is not a consistent scoring mechanism in place, and there is no consistency in how the decisions are actually being made, with different hiring managers being able to come up with different outcomes for the same candidate. Now, we find that by providing managers with a bank of questions to pick from, which include both positive and negative indicators, to show what is expected from a good answer and what a bad answer would be, it allows for a fair assessment and for consistent decisions to be made regardless of who is interviewing. But not only this, it also helps to provide valuable and constructive feedback to candidates who may be unsuccessful, which helps them to understand what their development areas are. This only helps to provide a better candidate experience and ultimately a better perception of your employer brand. Another way to help support managers with the recruitment process is in the form of a toolkit. This can help highlight what the recruitment process is, it can detail the relevant steps involved, and indicate what sits with the hiring manager and what sits with HR. This should also highlight any key information or timeframes that you would normally be aiming to work to, so everyone is clear on the expectations. We often find that it's sometimes the little things that get missed. So for example, we've had several instances where candidates have turned up to interview and there are no rooms available to interview them in. So by making sure people understand the simple things, like whose responsibility it is to book an interview room, can be just as important. So there are multiple things that can be done to ensure managers are confident at performing in interviews, and hopefully we've given you some good examples to take away and think about in terms of the training that can be provided, how to score the interview questions, what types of questions that can be asked, and in the form of a toolkit that can help to manage expectations.
Thank you. We've also been asked what are the best methods to use at each stage of the recruitment process. The question we would normally come across in this instance is usually, what would get us a better result? Using video interviews or telephone interviews, assessment centres or individual interviews, competency style interview questions, or values-based interview questions. There's no right or wrong answer, and the approach that will work best is by being flexible when defining the best recruitment process for your business. Not one approach will fit every role in an organisation, and one standard approach will not work across a whole industry. We found that for our volume recruitment and social care sector, conducting a 15 to 20-minute telephone interview with candidates combined with a values-based question at face-to-face interview stage will give the best outcome. And this is because candidates who don't necessarily have lengthy work experience or experience within that specific sector can highlight their transferable skills into the position, and they're able to show a hiring manager that they can match the company's values and will work well within teams and have enthusiasm for the role in the industry that they've applied to. Whereas with our graduate or apprentice recruitment teams, using video interviews, assessment centres, or interacting via gamification is a lot more successful. The video interviews give the candidates the flexibility to complete as and when they are able and ease them into the recruitment process, which for some can be a new and daunting experience. When reviewing candidates' video interviews, we are looking to assess how much impact a graduate has, and this method allows us to do so effectively. We're able to screen all body language when they are answering the questions, their gestures or enthusiasm or even nerves from their facial expressions. Assessment centres are long days, but very accurate for assessing graduates. Many of our clients like to use assessment centres as it gives them the opportunity to view the candidates in different contexts. For example, exercises within a group, individual interviews, and role plays. They are all also able to see how the candidates interact with the hiring managers or even other candidates over lunch and in break times. This gives the clients a rounded view on who would be best for their organisation. And this can also benefit the graduates as it allows them to highlight their strengths, skills and attributes over a whole day. We find that for our professional roles, and that can be from salary levels of 25,000 and above, our process will be tailored every time. So it's varying for each role and can be a combination of any of the methods I've just mentioned. So video interviews, telephone interviews, competency-based questions. For professional roles, specific previous experience is often necessary, so candidates will be required to draw upon their knowledge, giving example scenarios to demonstrate their experience and transferable skills. So, in our opinion, competency-based questions are therefore more commonly used at the face-to-face interview stage. As candidates are all asked the same questions, the recruitment will remain consistent and allow hiring managers to fairly evaluate candidates and make job-related, reliable and systematic decisions. A benefit for the candidate, having completed a competency-based interview, will be that they then receive very clear feedback on the areas they did well and where there is room for improvement for future interviews, giving the candidate a positive recruitment experience. For all recruitment, there will be passive candidates introduced into the process, and where this occurs, regardless of role or sector, an altered approach should be considered. The candidates won't have initially applied to that role or that company, so the process will require the hiring managers to be confident at selling the company and the benefits of working in the organisation to help increase the candidate's interest levels, although we do appreciate a hiring manager will still want to assess that candidate's skills. So we've a number of different approaches highlighted there, but we found there is no one specific process that we can suggest to implement across the board. So every role should have a tailored approach to help ensure success for your recruitment.
That's great, thanks Charlotte. So our next question is, how do you approach and resolve difficult to fill roles? What tips and strategies do you suggest for finding that needle in a haystack candidate? Now this is a challenge that I think every recruiter comes across, and to be completely honest, there is no simple answer. One size does not fit all with attraction. What works in one area may not work in another, and what works now might not work in the same way the next time around. One of the first places we suggest starting with is really understanding why it is you are struggling to recruit. So is it location? Is it pay? Is it the actual advert you're using? Are you advertising in the right places? Is what you want actually out there in the market? Are the expectations realistic and in line with competitors? To really understand this, we recommend completing a market analysis exercise which looks at benchmarking requirements, comparing adverts and understanding the demand for candidates in that area. It's then important to look at what you're asking, and are you asking for too much in comparison to the market? Are you offering flexibility, and where can the compromise be in terms of your requirements?
The next stage is to review the content of your adverts in terms of language used and the length of the advert. Typically, candidates will only look at an advert for a maximum of 20 seconds before flicking to the next one. So you don't have much time to grab the person's attention. So it's important your adverts are succinct, to the point, and engaging. We find the best way to source for these types of roles is to use a multi-channel approach that utilises both on and offline routes to market. This may include advertising on job boards, running sponsored adverts on Indeed, or doing a Google PPC campaign, as well as direct sourcing to the target passive market. Partnerships are also a benefit, with the local job centres and employment advisors can be of valuable support, as well as understanding what career events are happening locally and how best you can partake.
Absolutely. I mean, we've had some great successes from running an open day at our client site, which is publicised locally and supported by the job centres, so they really can support in a number of ways. You may also want to consider how you engage on social media, and also consider offering voluntary opportunities or work experience and taster days. We really recommend working collaboratively with the hiring manager, who in most instances are based on the ground in that location and therefore have a great source of local knowledge that can be tapped into to really support those offline methods, whether that's leaflet drops, putting up posters in local shops, community spaces or libraries. You can also ask your current teams, where do they hang out? If you know they are part of an online group or they're signed up to certain blogs, chances are that there are other like-minded people doing just the same that you're able to tap into. Another thing is to ensure you have a good refer a friend scheme in place that encourages referrals and that is being promoted internally. 21% of new recruits for one of our clients told us they joined the organisation for a referral scheme. That's 1 in 5 workers, and highlights this can be a great source for talent. If these schemes are incentivised, then please make sure it's managed effectively. All too often, employees become disengaged with these schemes because they fail to receive the promised remuneration. Finally, my last recommendation would be to make sure that you are flexible with how candidates for these roles are able to apply. Where it's difficult to attract candidates, the last thing you want to do is put them off by making them complete a 6-page application form when they can apply for one of your competitors by simply sending across their CV. So really consider what routes that are available to people to apply.
Thank you. The next question is, how do I improve retention in the workforce? The first point to make on this is to understand and expect a natural level of turnover. What's important is to understand how this compares to industry norms. For example, across the UK overall, it is 15%. However, in care, for example, the average is 25%. So how do you compare against your industry norms? First, understand why people are leaving. This can be achieved through completing exit interviews, and these are best completed at the point in which the person has handed in their notice and are still employed with you, as we find they are more likely to take that call. This is the one service we provide for our clients that is not white labelled, and that's because we tend to find we get a more open and honest feedback as a third party. It is there to provide you with useful insight as to why people leave, so it is really important that you not only review the feedback, but you act on it. Some of the areas we have found to be of importance when trying to reduce the number of early leavers is ensure the role and what is being asked is accurately detailed in the advertising that takes place. A high number of employees who leave within the first 3 to 6 months cite the role not meeting their expectations as the main reason. It's important as well that those interviewing at all stages of the recruitment process are clear about all aspects of the role, what the pay is, the hours and the job responsibilities, and don't move those goalposts. When reviewing this for one of our clients, we have found hours of work and job responsibilities were the 2 top reasons for employees leaving within the first 3 months, and hours of work again, top reason for employees leaving within 3 to 6 months.
Support from managers in the early days is crucial. New starters need to feel there is an open door policy where they can raise concerns and ask questions and know that they will receive the relevant support. Prep existing staff of the arrival of a new starter so they are on board with supporting them with their induction. The best recruitment process and induction in the world won't help improve retention if when that new starter arrives they are ignored, not expected and left to feel lost. We have multiple examples across clients of things going rapidly downhill at this stage. For longer term employees, we tend to find a lack of clear progression route is one of the main reasons why people leave. In flat structures, having clear career paths can be really hard to achieve, and yet expectations are often that people are looking for the next level up at 2 years in the job. If they are ambitious, you can see at this point that they are waiting for their boss to retire in order for them to progress to the next rung on the ladder, or have already been passed over for promotion. This will cause them to start looking around. We see this frequently and is one of the main reasons why people leave. Leavers would also tell us that they really want is support from their manager and guidance on what they can do. They are often aware that a job is not available, but they need someone to commit to saying, if you do X, Y, and Z, it will help you to get to where you want to be. Failure of managers to say thank you and show appreciation for a job well done or give recognition are frequently mentioned from longer serving employees for a reason for leaving. Sometimes it's the simple things that make a real difference. What's really important is there is a forum to gather this type of feedback, and once you have it, you make sure you do something with it.
The next question is on review sites, and we have been asked, how do I increase my rating on review sites such as Glassdoor or Indeed? It's firstly important to understand who would look at sites such as Glassdoor. Well, reviews of a company are typically viewed by potential employees, so people either choosing to apply for a position or candidates going through your recruitment process. So why do these people look on sites such as Glassdoor? Well, the main reason why they look on these sites is that potential or future employees know the information that they read on this site has been left by an actual employee and isn't something that has been put together by a marketing team to sell the positive aspects of a company. It's like a TripAdvisor review. It gives you real information and an alternative view on a company. On Glassdoor, by October 2016, 600,000 companies have been reviewed, with over 10 million reviews being left. And out of those, 72% of employees have said they are okay or satisfied with their job and company. There will always be some negative reviews on Glassdoor, or Indeed, and that can't always be helped. So companies' overall ratings should be considered. The more positive reviews left will reduce the percentage of negative feedback and still ensure a positive overall rating. If an organisation is seen to take responsibility for any negative feedback and look towards making any necessary improvements, it can help to counteract that negative feedback. The best approach to take initially is just to ask your staff to review your business on its Glassdoor profile, acting simply as a direct insight into how current workers feel towards the work they do and the business as a whole. Glassdoor's survey found that fresh reviews, so that's ones within less than 6 months of one another, have the greatest impact. You can also speak to employees early on in their employment. If you know you've got your recruitment process right, ask them to leave their recruitment experience. They have recently had a positive experience with you, so we'll usually be more than happy to let people know about it. It's also important to remember these sites aren't just for employees. Employers can ensure that they are marketing themselves as well. They need to be giving the best impression that they can. On Glassdoor, an organisation can tell their company story with an enhanced employer profile or ensure they highlight their employer brand. So to summarise, claiming your Glassdoor profile and becoming an engaged employer not only allows you to understand what employees and candidates are saying about you in order to respond appropriately, but it can also provide you insight into the demographic of those visiting your pages. So use that information, it's at your disposal. So you need to understand the background, experience, gender, age, and you also get to see other companies' visitors that are looking at you. You can start to build a more informed picture of the type of person who is engaged with your brand, which can only help to inform your recruitment decisions moving forward.
Okay, great. So the next question that we've been asked is quite a specific one relating to testing, and in particular to help improve the recruitment process for telephone-based operational roles. Now, this is a really, really good question that you can see here, and this is something that we often find ourselves discussing with our clients. There are thousands of testing providers out there, and it is probably worth having a conversation with them regarding your concerns to see if there is something separate that they may be able to do for you. There are many different ability tests that can be used that are quite role specific. However, one thing that I would suggest is before these are used, it's really important that you have a clear understanding of what good looks like for your organisation and whether these tests are a good indication of good role performance. Testing is often thought of as a quick fix solution to reducing application numbers, but it's important that it's implemented correctly if you're going to see any benefits from it. The best way of doing this is to first ask your existing employees in these roles to complete the tests. You can then review their results against their performance to see if this correlates with what you would expect. So are those who score the highest the people who are performing best in the role? If the answer is no, then ability testing may not be the best way for you to move forward as a recruitment assessment tool. You may actually find that the type of attitude and values a person has, combined with a good training program, resulted in your top performing employees, as opposed to those who may be more adept at doing online tests.
One area we speak to clients about is the use of situational judgment tests. These are a type of psychological test which present the test taker with realistic hypothetical scenarios and ask the individual to identify the most appropriate response or to rank the responses in the order they feel is most effective. They can either be used to assess knowledge responses, which is more closely linked to cognitive ability, or behavioural tendencies, which is linked to values and behaviours. These tests are specifically designed to meet the requirements of an organisation or a specific role type. Depending on the scale, they can be a relatively cost-effective alternative to the traditional ability or psychometric tests. They can be a good way for candidates to deselect themselves as well during the recruitment process. And it serves as a good way to ensure you are finding people who have the right behaviours and work ethic you are looking for. Overall, what is really important to consider here before introducing testing into the recruitment process is why would you be introducing testing into recruitment? There is no definitive evidence that shows testing consistently identifies people who perform well in tests as high performers in their roles day to day. Moving on to our next question. So we have been asked, how do I reduce the number of candidates that drop out during pre-employment? Candidates can drop out of pre-employment at all stages and can be influenced by many different factors. So it's important to remember that what happens throughout the recruitment process can still have a knock-on effect for the candidate in pre-employment. Recruiters therefore need to ensure this runs as efficiently as possible. It even starts with ensuring that managers who are hiring these individuals know what is required from the candidates during the interview stage for the pre-employment process. For example, what documents will need to be copied relating to identification and any forms that will need to be passed to the pre-employment team after a candidate is offered. As further down the line, if the candidates are having to make several trips to the company's offices due to this being missed, it won't give new employees the best impression. At the end of the recruitment stage is the offer of employment, and how this is presented to the candidate is key. We must remember that for a candidate, the offer element is crucial. They now have to hand their notice in to their current employer, and we all know that that isn't the easiest thing to do, so candidates will be nervous. For some companies, the pre-employment process starts the moment the candidate verbally accepts the offer of employment. Therefore, there is still a risk of dropping out due to the candidates receiving a counter-offer from their current employers. But if the offer is presented well, a candidate's motivation for leaving has been explored early on in the recruitment process, and any of the candidate's concerns are highlighted and addressed quickly, the recruitment process and the pre-employment process should start easily, avoiding any problems. The most common reasons for candidates dropping out further into the pre-employment process is down to the length of process, or if we have missed any queries they had at offer stage around pay, hours, or location of work. A change in personal circumstance is of course a potential, but this is not something that can always be helped or planned for.
Whether your pre-employment process is lengthy or not, explain the process to the candidate from the beginning and every step of the way until they go on a company induction or have their first day. Regular communication engagement is key. Are you able to send them any information on the company or the role for them to read through before they start? Can they come along to an upcoming team of meeting? Are there any nights out or team or company events that they can be invited to? Keeping in regular contact with the candidate will also ensure that any problems that do arise can be dealt with quickly and are not left to escalate. It is also an opportunity to find out more about a candidate and ensure they continue to have a good experience while they're waiting to start with your company. We've also found that completing a candidate fact sheet detailing their favourite chocolate bar, what their favourite film is, what football team they support, that is then shared with the team, helps with the engagement for that new starter on their first day. Wouldn't it be nice when the new employee arrived on their first day that their favourite chocolate bar was waiting for them on their desk? Or maybe there's a personal letter that's sent to them from the CEO welcoming them to the company. One of our clients issues the employer contract in the post along with a tea bag and a note that says, "Have a cup of tea on us while you review your contract," which I just think is a really nice touch. So I guess the key takeaway is to ensure there is open and transparent communication, and you do what you can to keep candidates engaged throughout the pre-employment process. Be creative and don't be scared to try something a little bit different. Okay, so our final question that we received is, how do I make the best use of talent pools? So talent pools are a great recruitment tool if they're used effectively. These are different to register your interest or candidates who might sign up for job alerts. Talent pools should be used for candidates who you've engaged with at some point during a recruitment process. They are particularly useful to support with recruitment in areas where you know volume or quality is typically an issue. Candidates can be added to this talent pool at any stage of the recruitment process. What's important is how you engage with them after to ensure that they remain a useful source. This engagement does not always need to be in the form of sending them potential jobs. Often the best way to keep candidates engaged is simply by sharing with them relevant information and stuff that they would find interesting. So that might be about things relating to the industry, or share with them your company newsletter and so forth. To help build that talent pool, it's really important for managers to understand the purpose of them and to understand they have the option of placing people into a talent pool after an interview. While a candidate may have been picked to the post, if you had another role, would you offer the second or third choice candidate? If the answer is yes, then you absolutely want them in your talent pool. It's also worth considering candidates who withdrew an application during your previous recruitment process. If you know the reasons why they withdrew, you can tailor the message. For example, did they accept a job offer elsewhere? How are they getting on? And is that organisation delivering on its promises? If not, this could be your chance to reinstate the application.
Last year, we ran 2 talent pool events for a client in both the north and south of the UK. It was a targeted talent pool day for a specific role in the business. So we went out into the market and direct sourced a number of candidates with the event specifically in mind. We engaged with all the individuals, inviting them to the day, letting them know that it would be a fantastic opportunity to receive information on the organisation and attend exercises and discussions that delve deeper into what a typical day would look like in that role in the organisation. We even put together leaflets and memorable goodies for the individuals to take away at the end of the day. We then requested feedback following that day, and all candidates let us know that they would accept a job as soon as one arose, as they had such a positive experience, finding all the information received on the day invaluable. We have then made sure we kept in touch with all candidates on a monthly basis, giving them an overview of available roles, new company information, newsletters, and it's been a real benefit for them. So for any difficult to fill roles our hiring managers have, it's allowed them to go back to that talent pool and pick up with a ready engaged candidate if needed. Talent pools can be used for many different reasons and can come in many forms, but we require a huge amount of investment of time and resource, and it does require an organisation to have a longer term recruitment strategy plan in place. They can be absolutely a valuable source of talent if they are managed effectively.
Okay, that's great. So thank you, Charlotte. And that actually brings us to the last of our questions that we were sent through. So thank you all for sending in your questions, and I hope that today has been of relevance for you and there are some things that you're able to take away and think about and potentially put into your own recruitment processes. Now, I think we did have a couple of questions that came through. So Charlotte, can you have a look and just let me know what the first one is?
Yeah, absolutely. Bear with me. So the first question we have received was, what recruitment metrics do you use?
Okay, yeah, well, that's definitely a good question. And to be honest, I imagine they're probably not too dissimilar to the ones that you would expect to see. So the metrics that we typically look at are things like cost per hire, interview attendance, conversion at face-to-face interview. We'll look at the different cycle times at the various different stages of the recruitment process and also the pre-employment process. We also look at like the percentage of jobs that have been filled. What else, Charlotte? Am I missing any?
We look at the top sources to measure return on investment. And from an internal perspective, I guess we measure our resource allocation to roles to make sure that that's working effectively.
Great. So I think ultimately the types of metrics that we use are the ones that you would expect, and they will vary slightly from client to client that we're working with, but typically those are the ones that I think most recruiters would probably be looking at to measure the performance of a recruitment campaign.
We have had another question come in. So the next question is, how do you ensure hiring managers follow the correct recruitment process?
Control. For me, that is all about control, and ensuring that managers are aware of what that recruitment process is.
And the benefits as well of having that process. So it's important that we build relationships with managers so they know it's a completely joined up approach. We are there to help them, and we want the same outcome they do. So again, communication is key. Make sure that hiring manager feels like they're involved in selecting the right candidate for their team.
And I guess from our perspective, for us what's really important is that we've got a really strong internal stakeholder that's really able to influence, manage and support us with that recruitment process.
Definitely.
Is there any other questions that we've received?
Yeah, we've got one more, or two more, sorry, actually, but I know that we are short on time, so I think we'll answer one final question to make sure we don't run over, and obviously contact the other question if we can. The next question is, what do you find is your average time to hire?
Okay, well that is again a really good question, and it's going to be really cliched with my answer, I guess, but it's going to really depend on the types of roles that you're recruiting for, and again what it is that the processes are that you're following. So for us and for our graduate recruitment campaigns, for example, that typically run over a 14-week period. So our cycle times is effectively that length of time, whereas for our volume recruitment, that typically averages between 12 to 14 days. I know for specialist and professional roles, however, that can be slightly different, and we'll probably be looking more there at 30 days in terms of from application to offer. So I think it really does just depend on the process that you're adopting and the types of roles that you're recruiting for.
Definitely.
Brilliant. Okay, well that brings us to a close on the session today. If there are any other questions, then please feel free to send them through to us. Our contact information is on the screen. If there is a final question, we'll make sure that's followed up with directly afterwards. I hope that the session has been useful, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thank you for attending.